Before the darkness came, Mama Igioma had eyes like ripe guava, bright, sharp, and full of life. In those days, she wore her joy as easily as her wrapper, her laughter bouncing off the courtyard walls like a favorite song. The sun had a way of loving her then, spilling golden light on her mornings as she hummed and watered the garden her husband planted before he died. That was long ago. Now, in the house that echoed with silence, the birds told her what time it was. She listened for their songs before lifting her tired body off the floor where she slept, her old wrapper wrapped tightly around her as if even dreams needed protection. At the first call of the morning dove, low, patient, and always sad, she would rise, feel her way to the back room, and retrieve the broom made of palm fronds. She knew every inch of the compound by memory. Her feet mapped the world by rhythm, 3 careful steps from the doorway, turn slightly, another 6 till the mango tree root. Each morning, she swept the front yard slowly, drawing long circles on the dusty ground, as though erasing time itself. She swept not because of dirt but because of love. So he knows the path home is still clean. It was a ritual, a prayer, a stubborn act of faith. Obinna, her only child. Her miracle. Her heart walking around outside her body. She had carried him for 9 months and raised him alone after Papa Obinna coughed and never got up again. Her boy grew like a sunflower, tall, eager, always facing the light. He had hands that could sketch the dreams of houses not yet built and a laugh that always started in his chest. He called her mummy even at 25, with a soft boyishness that never aged. He was the first in the village to graduate in architecture. He got a job in Lagos. She could still hear that last message, crackling through the old phone like a whisper from the past. "Mummy, I got the job." That was 10 years ago. The world said he died in a building collapse, some high-rise in Lekki that crumbled like wet Accra. But no one brought her his body. No one came with his name tag, his wallet, or even a photograph. Just a name on a list. She refused it. If my son died, she would whisper to the wind, my heart would stop too. And so, she waited. People came at first, neighbors with soup bowls and heavy eyes. The church sent delegations, soft-voiced women with scriptures and questions. But sorrow made her a poor hostess. She refused condolences like curses. Then they stopped coming. Mama Igioma was now alone in the compound where the sun touched nothing softly anymore. Her days were filled with waiting, sweeping, and talking to a boy who might still be walking home. Obinna, she would call out some evenings, her arms stretched out in front of her like wings. "My Pekin. Can you hear Mummy?" The compound gave no answer. Just the rustle of dry leaves and the occasional lizard scampering by. But lately, something had changed. She would leave a calabash of water outside, and by morning, it would be cleaner than she left it. A broom she swore was resting by the door would be back in the corner. One night, during heavy rain, she woke to find the leaking part of the zinc patched with something soft and dry. She told herself it was memory playing tricks. That maybe Ngozi from next door was sneaking in out of pity. But she never heard Ngozi come or go. Still, the yard was always swept, even on mornings when her knees refused to obey her body. She would run her fingers across the ground, and feel the pattern, neat, careful strokes that mimicked her own. And sometimes, just before dawn, she thought she heard it, a second broom, sweeping in rhythm. Mama Igioma sat by the doorway one evening, counting the spaces between bird calls. She no longer kept a radio. The silence was more honest. She wore her late husband's old sweater, it still smelled faintly of cassava and kerosene. In her hand was Obinna's last letter, written in blocky, precise handwriting. She couldn't read it anymore, but her fingers remembered its edges, the way the paper creased where he folded it. She had once asked the church boy to read it to her. Just once. Then she memorized it and folded the paper like a sacred scroll. It lived now in her wrapper's inner fold, close to her belly. "Mummy, I will build you a house someday. Not just any house. One with big glass windows and yellow walls. It will smell of vanilla and sunlight. You will never have to sweep again. I love you, Mummy. Don't work too hard." She pressed the paper to her lips. But she still swept. Because some promises weren't meant to be kept, they were meant to be held on to. Later that night, as the wind curled through the broken louver windows and the moon cast shadows she could no longer see, Mama Ijeoma smiled faintly. She heard something. Soft. Reassuring. The sound of sweeping. But this time, it wasn't hers. She sat up slightly. Her ears sharpened. Yes. Someone was sweeping. Carefully. Quietly. Her heart, tired and full of years, did not leap in fear. It rested in something else. Something tender. "Obinna," she whispered. But the night said nothing. Only the broom continued, brushing paths across the compound. Keeping the way clean. Just in case. The man without a face, they used to call him Ikin the Stone. Not because he was hard or cold, but because he was reliable. Solid. A boy who came from nothing and built things with his hands. Foundations, walls, scaffolding, things that stood. Before he lost everything, Ikenna was just a boy from Onitsha with callous palms and dust in his dreams. An orphan of silence, no father to know, no mother to remember. He grew up in the yawning mouths of motor parks, slept beneath benches, fetched water for a price, learned fast which looks meant danger and which meant food. He was 12 when he first held a trowel. A mason had taken pity and let him carry bricks. By 14, he was laying blocks straighter than the older men. By 20, he had moved to Lagos, wearing second-hand boots and borrowed confidence. There was peace in the rhythm of building, mix. Lay. Tap. Align. There was pride in the sweat, in watching walls rise where there had been nothing. He didn't need much. A plate of food. A mattress on the floor. His wages in an envelope at week's end. No one ever asked where he came from. Until the building fell. It was supposed to be a luxury high-rise, 12 floors, glass balconies, imported tiles. The kind of place even his ghost wouldn't afford. He had seen the signs, cracks filled with paint. Steel rods too thin. Cement mixed with greed. He warned them. Not once. Not twice. He told the site supervisor, a round man with loud perfume and louder threats. "Mind your level," the man said. "Now you draw the plan?" So he kept laying bricks. And then one morning, the sky cracked open, and the ground swallowed 37 lives. Screams, then silence. Dust, then blood. Bones beneath blocks. The concrete turned into coffins. He survived only because he had gone to fetch water. By the time he returned, there was no building. Only rubble. Only bodies. Only the choking smell of hot metal and unfinished dreams. The police came. So did the press. They took photos. They asked questions. Then they made arrests. Engineers disappeared. The site manager vanished. But the workers, the poor, the nameless, the ones who could not speak English on camera, were left holding the blame. He was arrested that night. Prison is not a place. It's a slow erasure. They shaved his head, gave him a number. Cell 4B. The guards called him Builder Man, mocked his silence, his nightmares, the way he curled into himself at night. His trial lasted 10 minutes. Criminal negligence. They said he should have spoken out. That he was complicit by silence. That even a laborer bears responsibility. He served 6 years. In that time, the world forgot him. The company folded. The headlines faded. Lagos built again, and again, and again. No one wrote to him. No one visited. He had no one. When the gates finally opened, and the officer tossed him a black nylon bag with his old boots and shirt inside, Ikenna was not the same man. He walked out into a world that had never waited for him. For a while, he stayed under the Carter Bridge. Then Ajij. Then Badagry. Eating scraps. Drinking gutter water. Avoiding police. Something inside him had cracked. Not loud, not visible, just a quiet fissure in the soul. He no longer dreamed. The hands that once built now trembled. He started muttering to himself. Talking to ghosts. Sometimes, he woke up crying and didn't know why. He roamed from town to town. Slept in abandoned kiosks. Became a shadow that moved only when chased. He began to forget his own name. He looked at his reflection in puddles and could not recognize the face. A man without a home. A man without a past. A man without a future. Then came the rain. One heavy night in the east, he staggered through thick downpour, his shirt clinging like skin, his stomach hollow. He had been chased again, this time by street boys who wanted the iron buckle from his belt. He ran through alleys, past shuttered shops, past houses with warm yellow light. Then he saw it, an old compound with peeling paint and sagging walls. At the back, almost hidden by cassava plants, a small wooden shed, once used for grinding or storage. He forced the door open with a stone. Inside, it smelled of mildew, rat droppings, and old iron. But it was dry. And it had a roof. That night, for the first time in years, he slept without looking over his shoulder. He didn't know who lived there, didn't care. He would leave before daylight. But morning came, and he heard nothing. No shouting. No footsteps. Just the distant call of birds and the soft brush of sweeping. Sweeping. That sound. It made something ache inside him, something old, something warm. He peeked from the wooden slats and saw her. A woman, elderly, thin, wrapped in faded ankara, bent low, sweeping the earth with a handmade broom. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like a dance she had done all her life. She was blind. He didn't know how he knew, maybe the way she tilted her head, the way she felt for the ground with her toes. She moved with memory, not sight. She swept for over an hour. Then sat beneath a tree and whispered something to the wind. He didn't hear the words. But her voice sounded like something he'd lost. Ikenna stayed. He didn't mean to. But night after night, he returned to the shed. And day after day, he watched her, quietly, respectfully. She swept. She talked to the air. She sometimes laughed at jokes no one told. There was no one else. Just her and the ghosts. One afternoon, he saw her trip near the back steps. Before he could think, he reached out and caught her elbow. She froze. He froze. Then, without turning her face, she whispered, "Thank you." He pulled away, disappeared back into the shed. She never called out. Never asked who he was. Never locked her door. That night, he cried. Not loudly. Not out of fear. But because someone had thanked him. Soon, he began to fix things. The leaky roof, patched with nylon and rope. The broken water pot, replaced quietly with a new one. He swept the compound when her knees gave up. He left peeled oranges on the doorstep. Small things. She would smile and say, "Thank you, my child," though she never saw him. And he began to live again, not as Ikenna, the prisoner, the ghost, the builder of tombs, but as a shadow in service. A man rebuilding not houses, but dignity. He never spoke to her. Not yet. He wasn't ready. He didn't know her name. She didn't know his. But each day he watched her sweep the yard, talking to her son as if he were just late from work. Something inside him shifted. He knew what it was to wait for someone who would never come home. He knew what it was to carry the weight of a body not buried. He did not know, could not know, that the house he once helped build would come to take more than lives. It would come for truth. And truth, like houses, could collapse too. The broom made a whispering sound against the earth, like the hush of prayer beads sliding through fingers. Every morning, without fail, Mama Ijeoma rose before the cock crowed, tied her wrapper firmly, and felt her way to the yard. The house still remembered her, the tilt of a stone here, the bend of a tree root there. Her toes knew the bumps, the dips, the broken cracks of the earth the way a mother knows the curve of her child's face in the dark. She swept so he would know. Obinna. Her son. Her soul wrapped in flesh. If he found his way home, she reasoned, the path should be clean. He shouldn't stumble over fallen branches or thorns. He shouldn't think she had forgotten. She could not see, but she could still prepare. Love, after all, had its own sight. That morning, however, she paused. The ground, it felt different. Smoother. As if someone had already passed the broom before her. She touched the earth with trembling fingers. No fresh leaves. No scattered pebbles. Strange. A breeze rustled the guava tree. Somewhere distant, a goat bleated. She shook her head, smiled to herself, and resumed sweeping. Maybe the angels were helping her today. The small gift started 2 days later. The first was a single orange. Plump, sweet-smelling, placed neatly by her doorstep. She had laughed then, a sound hoarse from disuse. Obinna, she whispered into the morning air, her fingers caressing the fruit as if it were a sacred relic. You have come back to tease your mother, eh? She peeled it slowly, savoring each slice, each burst of juice on her tongue. It tasted of sunlight and old promises. The second gift was a handful of roasted ground nuts, wrapped carefully in a piece of brown paper. She found it resting against the base of her wooden stool. Tears stung her useless eyes. My son is near, she said aloud, rocking gently on the stool, holding the warm paper to her chest. I know it. I know it. Hidden behind the broken slats of the shed, Ikenna listened. He did not understand it, the way his hands shook after placing the offerings. The way her voice, cracked and soft, made his chest ache with something dangerously close to longing. He only knew that when she spoke, the world stopped spinning so violently. He only knew that she called out a name, Obinna, with so much love it hurt. He told himself it was nothing. A name. A coincidence. Yet he began dreaming again. Small, broken dreams of warmth, of shared food, of hands patting his shoulder in gratitude. And always, always the scent of oranges. Weeks passed. The small kindnesses grew. When the back fence sagged dangerously, he nailed it upright with rusted nails he scavenged. When the rainy season flooded her water basin, he dug a shallow path to drain it. When the kitchen door's hinge broke, he fixed it under the veil of darkness. She noticed. She always noticed. One evening, she stood by the cracked steps, her head tilted, her unseeing eyes scanning the heavy dusk. I know you're there, she said softly. Ikenna froze where he crouched by the guava tree. You must eat more, she added, patting his arm clumsily. A mother's duty is to feed her child. Even when the child is already a man. The sun slipped below the horizon, and in the darkness, two broken souls sat side by side. Neither said another word. There was no need. That night, Mama Ijeoma prayed aloud. Her voice floated through the compound, up to the stars. She prayed for protection. For the return of her son. for the mercy of a god who seemed to have forgotten her. Ikenna listened from the shadows, tears carving silent rivers down his face. The morning sun was a soft, reluctant thing, bleeding weakly over the crumbling compound walls. The guava tree shook its leaves in the dry breeze. Mama Ijeoma sat on her low stool, hands moving methodically over a pile of cassava, peeling, slicing, setting aside. The rhythm of life had returned to the house, delicate and fragile as a butterfly's wing. In the shadows near the shed, Ikenna moved about his secret tasks, fixing the leaking tap, oiling the creaking gate, refilling the firewood stack before she could fumble her way to it. They lived like that, two wounded souls orbiting each other, not speaking, but saying everything in the silences between their breath. Mama Ijeoma hummed a hymn under her breath, her voice cracked and beautiful. It was, for a fleeting moment, a perfect morning. Until the knock came. KPA KPA KPA. Sharp. Unfamiliar. A sound that did not belong. Mama Ijeoma froze. The knife slipped from her hand, thudding against the ground. Ikenna stiffened where he stood behind the shed, every muscle screaming at him to run. KPA KPA KPA. The knock came again, not urgent, not angry. Just steady. Patient. A stranger's knock. Mama Ijeoma rose slowly, her cane tapping the ground before her. She faced the direction of the gate, blind eyes narrowing. "Who is it?" she called, her voice firmer than she felt. A woman's voice answered, careful and polite. "Good afternoon, Ma. My name is Chisholm. Hi. I'm a journalist." The word journalist floated through the dusty air like a wasp, sharp and buzzing. "I'm working on a remembrance project," the voice continued. "About the building collapse, 10 years ago." The knife inside Ikenna's chest twisted. He pressed himself flat against the wall, holding his breath. "Please," Chisholm said, softer now. "I would like to speak with you." Mama Ijeoma hesitated. The cane tapped once, twice against the cracked floor. Then she turned and walked towards the gate, her steps slow but steady. The old iron latch groaned as she lifted it.